Twisters has just recently released and I've finally gotten around to seeing it, and I have some thoughts to share with you guys, so let's get into it. So Twisters, as we all know, is the follow-up to the 1996 film Twister, which I saw for the very first time right before I saw Twisters, and I really loved that movie. I went to this screening with my mum, who is a massive fan of these big giant storm movies, so it was an absolute pleasure to watch Twister and then Twisters directly afterwards. I think that for the storm movie genre, it's not really one that has too many great films, but I do think Twister is one of the better ones, and Twisters looks to follow in that direction, and there's plenty of talent here, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. You have directing this Lee Isaac Chung, director of Minari, which was one of my favorite movies of 2020, and is a film that I thought probably deserved to win Best Picture that year. I absolutely loved what he did with that movie. And then you have a great cast here with Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, and Anthony Ramos. And fortunately, I do think Twisters understands the core of what Twister was. It was a film that had some really great characters that you could easily connect with all of this just insane spectacle from the destruction of a tornado, and it really appreciates the force of Mother Nature. And this feels no different in that regard. This has some really great characters. I think Glenn Powell is the absolute standout in this movie. He adds so much charisma to this movie and so much charm that he almost carries the film on his back at times, especially in the moments where it really lulls. And then you have Daisy Edgar Jones, who is fantastic in this film. Some really great characters working alongside each other, and the relationship that these characters have with each other, I thought was really decent. It starts off as this very adversarial relationship, and at first I wasn't really a big fan of it because it just felt like kind of generic, and it kind of felt like it wanted you to follow one group over the other, but one just had so much more charm than the other that it was just impossible not to support the quote-unquote antagonist in these sections. But as the film progresses, it kind of harmonizes a lot more, and you start to really see some of these characters play off each other. Lee Isaac Chung knows exactly what he's doing here. He knows that both Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones really play off each other nicely and have a lot of chemistry on set. And that works to the benefit of the film because they're playing off each other a lot within this movie, and more so as the film progresses. And I think that gives it a really nice steady momentum. I'm talking about all of this because this film does have decent characters. The character moments were some of my favorite moments in this film. Of course, there is that insane spectacle that you can expect from all of these tornadoes just tearing through Oklahoma. There's all of this just craziness that goes on, and it's just so damn fun when that all goes down. But when there's moments of real danger, you at least care about these characters enough, and it adds to the tension to these scenes. So I do think Lee Isaac Chung and this cast do a fantastic job of making us connect with these characters and really just giving it something extra other than just the pure spectacle of the destruction. And then with the destruction, this thing knows exactly what it's doing. There's so many tornadoes in this film, and they're really just insane to look at. All the different tornadoes. There's some that are just absolutely wild that I just was so excited about. I mean, one of these tornadoes, it was like, if you don't like this, you don't like fun. This thing was just insane. And I really love that. And it adds something extra that Twister didn't really have. Just doing something a little bit different. And that kind of sets itself apart a little bit and kind of justifies its existence to me with these decent characters and new ways of introducing this spectacle. I think it's also shot really well too, surprisingly for this kind of movie. Like, I really wasn't expecting too much from this, but it does really deliver in a lot of different aspects. There's moments that really felt reminiscent of the way that Minari was shot, which was great. Not as much as I would like. I really do like the style that Lee Isaac Chung has in his films. And it was nice to see some of it shine through in Twisters, but I didn't think there was enough of it. I really think that we could have had a little bit more personality within the style of the film, but it is a well-shot movie. It looks good, the visual effects look absolutely amazing, and it's written well, so there's not too many complaints there. It is just something that I noticed and would have liked a little bit more of. I also think a lot of the supporting characters outside of our main three really one-dimensional, and they kind of are in Twister as well, but they had a lot more personality to them. I mean, you had Philip Seymour Hoffman in one of these supporting roles in the first movie, and he just steals scenes and has so much personality and is so funny. And there are a couple of characters that I did like enough. They weren't terrible, but I'm gonna forget about them. Just being completely honest with you, I kind of already have. They just didn't really do all that much. As I said, really one-dimensional, and they were fine, but don't really do anything special. This really is the Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones show, and as I said, they completely deliver in being these somewhat complex characters that kind of subvert your expectations at times and go against who they're kind of picturing the other character is within their head. And I really liked that dynamic and really making these people truly understand one another and understanding where they came from before making assumptions because of where they are in their career. I also had some issues with the soundtrack. It's not terrible once again, but it was just distracting in a way that I didn't like. This is more of a Lee Isaac Chung thing because Minari has one of the best scores of the decade to me. I absolutely adore that score. And while I wasn't expecting anything on that level, I would have liked more of a musical score, an original score that felt a little bit more epic or really hit on those more touching moments rather than just a soundtrack that has a bunch of country hits on it. It just didn't really work for me and did pull me out of the film at moments. And I do think having a score infused in these sections instead of a soundtrack would have been the more appropriate choice. Other than that, the pacing lulls at points. I do think it is a weaker film than the first Twister, because I do think that this film doesn't get off to the greatest start. I mean, it does have a pretty interesting opening sequence that I did like, but the first act as a whole was just more of that boilerplate, generic stuff that wasn't really having me too compelled into what's going on. But as it transitions into the second act, it really evolves a lot and improves a lot in making me connect with these characters in terms of making these storms feel like they matter. The first act, it was happening every now and then, but it was very inconsistent, and I was just having a little bit harder of a time really engaging with this film like it wanted me to. Not until that second act was I really locked in and connected, and I thought the third act was brilliant. And overall, I do think this is just a solid film. As a whole, Twisters, I think, is pretty good. I don't think it's quite as good as the first one, but it is a solid enough time at the theaters. There's all of this spectacle, great characters, solid performances. I'm kind of surprised by this film. I really didn't have any expectations for this going into it, and I came out having a good time, and that's all I could ask for here. Is it some 10 out of 10 masterpiece? No, not at all, but it is a good storm movie that is satisfying. Hell yeah it is, and I do recommend it, especially if you love this genre. As a score, I'm going to give Twisters a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a good movie, and I think this is worthy of your time in the theaters, just for that spectacle alone and that amazing sound and these great visual effects for these Twisters. It really is an awesome sight to see and is a whole lot of fun. And those are my thoughts towards Twisters. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments below. Where do you think this stacks up against the original one? As I said, I do think the first one is better, but I'd love to hear your thoughts if you think the second one is better, because I do hear that a lot of people love this movie, and I can understand why. Let me know your thoughts. Remember to like and subscribe, and if you really like this channel, please consider becoming a member by hitting the join button down below. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.